Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Erica and today we're doing the mid-year freakout tag. So this tag is exciting for me because this is the first tag the first video in general that I ever posted on my channel. Last year, I started my channel in July and this is the first video I ever filmed. So it's exciting to be doing it 1 year later. And I'm very excited to answer all the questions. I've had a great reading year so far, and let's jump into the questions. Okay, so the first question is the best book that you've read so far this year. And this was so easy for me to think of. I couldn't even think of like a second book that I wanted to include in this because nothing has compared to this book for me. And that is The Serpents and the Wings of Night. This book, this is by Christopher Robin, by the way. This book became my whole personality once I read it. I am obsessed with this book. It's like basically vampire Hunger Games, and it was fast-paced and fun, and the romance is amazing. And I'm just obsessed with this book and the second book too. And I love this book so much. I can't even explain to you how much. I finished this book and immediately wanted to start it over. So this is 100% my favorite book of the year. So far, it'll probably be my favorite book of the whole year. I can't imagine anything else topping this for me. Next is the best sequels that you've read this year. And for me, the first one I have is The Wicked King. I read the whole Cruel Prince series this year. It was like the first couple of books I read. And I was in love with this second book specifically. I think this is such a good sequel. The tension in this book was so great. The political intrigue. I just love this series, and this is definitely my favorite in the series. So, The Wicked King by Holly Black. Also, a book I just read, which is Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is now my favorite book in the Chestnut Springs series. Theo is everything. I love him. I love that he is like golden retriever type of man, but he's also super protective. I like a man that is going to be protective of his heroine, but also be funny and lighthearted and all of that. So definitely love him. And I also relate the most, I think, to Winter in Winter's story. I loved seeing her become a mom, and I just related to Winter in so many different ways. So this is definitely one of the best sequels that I've read this year. Next question is a new release you have not read yet but want to. I have Slaying the Vampire Conqueror. I have not read this book yet. I want to read this book very badly. I don't know why I've been putting it off. I think I've been putting it off because this is the last book that I have left to read from Carissa Broadbent, and I just love her so much that I don't want it to end for myself. But she obviously plans to write more books. She just had a baby, so she's taking a much needed break. So I'm so excited to read this. This takes place in the same world as Crowns of Nyaxia, but it's following different characters, and I'm just excited to dive into this world again and learn more about it and fall in love with these characters because I know that I will. Another book that I have not gotten to yet but I really want to is Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. Laura Thalassa, I've really grown to love her writing this year. I've been reading the Bargainer series and I really enjoy it. So when I saw she was coming out with this book, I was pumped. This involves witches, which I love witches, and it's a fantasy romance, which I love fantasy romance. So this has like all the cards aligned for me to love it because I like Laura Thalassa, the witch aspect, the romance. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for this one, and I think I'm going to pick it up very soon. And then this one might not fully count because I'm currently reading it, but that is Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. This is the second book in Joey and Aoife's story in the Boys of Tommen series, so it's technically book 4. And I'm like 86 pages into this so far, so not very far, but I'm loving it so much. But this is definitely a book that I want to read. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of 2023. And for me, that is Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is Beau's story, and we've been waiting for his book this whole series. And I just think that his book is going to be my favorite and the best one in this series. It's kind of going to be a forbidden romance, and Beau has a pretty traumatic past. So I'm just excited to get that book, and I know I'm going to love it. And then the next one is A Curse of True Love by Stephanie Garber. This is the third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. And I read both Caraval and the first two books in that series this year, and I am obsessed, so I can't wait for that book as well. Next book is Biggest Disappointment, and for me, that is unfortunately The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. Like I said, I loved the Cruel Prince trilogy, so this is a spin-off series to that series, and it just fell flat, in my opinion, in comparison to that series. The romance aspects weren't nearly as good. I didn't really like where the plot was going. And I just overall didn't really enjoy this book. I also feel like it had some pacing issues and I was bored for a majority of the book. So that's The Stolen Heir. I was hoping to love it and I just didn't, but that's okay. The next one is Mile High by Liz Tom Ford. And I did give this book 4 stars. The only reason I'm putting it as a disappointment is because the way that this book was hyped up, I was really expecting this to be one of my new favorite romance books. I love sports romance. I loved the premise of it, and it was good. It just wasn't that memorable, in my opinion, and 4 stars isn't a bad rating at all. It just wasn't as amazing as I was thinking it was going to be for myself. It did have some really, really amazing mental health rep, especially from the male point of view, which I loved and don't see that very often. So I definitely love that aspect of the book, but the rest of the book just felt very forgettable, in my opinion. The next question is the biggest surprise of the year, and that is 100% Manacled by Sin Lin Yu. This is a fanfic, so I was very uncertain how I would feel about it. I've never read a fanfic before, and also the content, this is very, very heavy and dark, and I was a little bit nervous about some of the trigger warnings going into it, but it was amazing. It was very dark, like I said, but it was worth the read 100%. I'm in love with this fanfic and I want to read more now. And yeah, Manacled was definitely a big surprise and I am so happy that I loved it. The next surprise is The Frat Boy by Nikki Sloan. I loved this book and I gave it 4.5 stars. I am so surprised by this because I DNF'd The Pool Boy by Nikki Sloan and did not like that book at all. So I was definitely shocked to like this one. This one is just like a smutty good time, but I really, really enjoyed it. So definitely surprised by that book. A new favorite author, for me, that would be Stephanie Garber. Like I said, I read the whole Caraval trilogy and then I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, the first 2. And she's definitely just one of my new favorite authors. I love her writing. It's very whimsical and fairy tale and fast paced. And I just love her writing. So she's definitely a new favorite author. Also, Elizabeth O'Rourke. I did read 2 of Elizabeth O'Rourke's books last year. And I really, really liked them. One of them was in my favorite books of the year. So she's not technically a new to me author, but I would say she's a new favorite author this year because even though I did love one of her books last year, I wouldn't have considered her a favorite author last year, but this year I really dived into her backlist and found many of her books that I just love. The Summer We Fell, which is her new release, is going to be in my top 10, I think, of this year. So she's definitely just solidified herself as a favorite author of mine this year. Even though I didn't read her for the first time this year, she's a favorite this year. The next question is newest fictional crush, and I kind of already talked about it, but Theo Silva from Reckless. I just love him so much. I love how protective he is. I love how he parented. I love how he took care of Winter, and I love that he was lighthearted most of the time, but serious when he needed to be. And yeah, Theo is just everything, and I love him. Also, Rain from The Servants of the Wings of Night. I 100% love him. He's kind of morally gray, but also funny, and I really love him. New favorite character. For me, that's Jax of Hearts from both Caraval, and you really see him the most in Once Upon a Broken Heart. And I just love him. He is like the most morally gray character I think I've ever read, but you never know which way he's gonna go. He'll do something that's really crappy and then he's being really sweet later, and you just never really know. And I love the way he is written. I think Stephanie Garber did his character so well, and he's definitely one of my new favorite characters. Next is a book that made you cry. So I don't cry in books. Like, I read a lot of sad books and a lot of books that have a more serious tone, and I just don't cry. Like, I read Manacled, didn't shed a tear. And I don't know why. I don't cry in books typically. There's one book though that has made me cry this year. And I think that's just because of what happened in the book was a little bit more personal. So it made me cry. And that is Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. There's something that happens towards the beginning of this book that really, really just made me like sob. I really love this book and it definitely made me cry. It is the only book to make me cry this year. And yeah, Magnolia Park's Long Way Home. Book that made me happy. So for me, this has to be Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun. This is the third book in the Finley Donovan series. This is a cozy mystery series that is just so, so fun. It reminds me a lot of Good Girls, the TV show. So if you like that show, I think you would love this. But it follows a single mom who gets herself in a sticky situation, and her nanny and her like are partners in crime basically. And it's just so much fun. I love this series. The third book was so funny. Vero is like my favorite character. She's a nanny and she just says the funniest things and I love her so much. There's a specific line in here that I still laugh at, and the cop, they're in an academy, like they're undercover in an academy, and a cop is trying to explain to them how to move an unconscious body, and Vero just cracks a joke about him mansplaining how to move a dead body, and I still think about it. It's so funny. So yeah, I really, really love that book. The most beautiful book I bought or received this year, and that is going to be my Fairy Loot edition of Foxglove King. This is so gorgeous. There's foiling on it. I love the floral aspect with like the heart in the middle. The pages are gorgeous. I love that. Yeah, this book is just gorgeous. I subscribed to Fairy Loot this year and their books are seriously stunning. So it's just gorgeous. I still haven't read this book yet, so I think this could go into like anticipated release I still want to get to, because I definitely do want to read this, but it is so pretty. So that is definitely the most gorgeous book I've gotten this year. So the last question is a book you still need to read before the end of the year, and my TBR is never ending. There's a million books I could put on this list, but there are two series that I really, really want to complete this year. And the first one is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I read Throne of Glass, I think 2 years ago, and I just never continue on with the series. So I want to reread Throne of Glass and then read the rest of the series all the way through, especially before the third Crescent City book comes out in January. I just want to have read all of her backlist, and yeah, so definitely Throne of Glass. Also, another series that I read the first book on and just never continued, and that is Shatter Me by Chara Mafi. I read Shatter Me when it came out in like 2011 or something like that, and I never continued on, and people still love that series to this day, so I really just want to finish the series. So I'm going to reread Shatter Me and then read the rest of the series, and those are just two series that I really want to finish before the end of the year. But like I said, I could add 1,000,001 books to this question because my TBR is just never ending. But that is all the questions I have for the mid-year Freakout Tag. I can't wait to hear everyone's answers for this. I've already watched so many of these videos and I just love this tag so much. So that's all for me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.